Hello and welcome back to AWS On Air. I'm Am Grabelli, one of your hosts for AWS On Air here at reInvent. I'm posted up here in the Omnia nightclub. I've been here all day. They won't get me to leave. They've tried time and again. They can't get me out of here. Only joking. I'm here in my hotel room getting ready. Steve, you're there at the actual event?
I have come down to the event. Yeah, I mean, I had some jobs to do as a track owner, but I figured I would hang around the AWS Air studio and see what it was all like.
All right.
Yeah.
We're here to talk with a product team about a launch from AWS. Omer, how about you kick us off? And Steve,
Sure.
in between, maybe mute, because we do have a bit of background from you.
All right, let me go on mute.
Go ahead, Omer.
So Am, thanks for the introduction. We are super excited today. We have just launched our Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability feature. So very excited.
And Jared, who are you?
Hey, my name's Jared. I'm a principal engineer on the CloudWatch team.
Very nice, very nice.
And I forgot to introduce myself. So
It's okay. Go ahead.
I'm Omer. Omer Kırıkçı, senior product manager in CloudWatch.
Omer, that's how we know it's live, right?
Yep.
All right. So where do we begin? What did we launch today? What is it? And maybe we could do a bit on observability in general. Like what are the things that people should be thinking about when it comes to observability?
Sure. So the feature that we have launched today, cross-account observability, is a centralized monitoring tool that enables customers seamlessly search, analyze, and visualize their cross-account telemetry data. This includes logs, metrics, traces, as if they were operating in a single account without any account boundaries. So today, the AWS guides customers to deploy their applications across multiple accounts to establish security and billing boundary between teams, or reduce the impact of operational events by isolating resources. But this creates monitoring challenges, and this is the feature that we're addressing those challenges and helping our customers.
Cool. So how does it actually address that challenge, right? So if I've got multiple accounts, if I'm deploying to I've got multiple teams, all different accounts, different environments. That's a huge collection of accounts potentially, right? How does it address those challenges of centralizing?
Sure. Let me just step back and let's discuss how customers handle that use case today. Let's start with that one first, if you don't mind. So today, they create additional central repository of data, which creates extra cost and extra overhead for them due to this duplication. So with Amazon CloudWatch cross-account observability, we are creating a new concept of monitoring account. And what does a monitoring account do? It's a central view of cross-account telemetry data across many individual accounts, which we call as source accounts. So all you need to do is to define your monitoring account and your source account, and then link them to each other, such that you're going to share your telemetry from your source account with the monitoring account. So it's a lot easier and effective way to handle cross-account monitoring and centralized monitoring.
Now, cross-account, that might be new for some people, right? I work in the AWS partner network, so it's not a new concept for most of our partners, because that's how a lot of partners actually, install their software into other people's AWS account, is through cross-account roles, for example. But cross-account for an AWS builder, and Jared, you could take this over. Maybe both of you have some opinions on this. Why are people using multiple accounts, and why is cross-account a thing?
Yeah, so we shard workloads across multiple accounts for many reasons, to increase availability, to provide security boundaries, and to provide billing isolation. So there are several different reasons that we may shard workloads across accounts. I'll let Omer add on to that if you want.
Sure. As I mentioned to you, also due to create billing boundary between teams or reduce the impact of operational events by isolating resources. So in each account, when you create accounts, you are trying to isolate those events by account. And this is the main reason, one of the main reasons why customers are operating per account or in multi-account organizations.
So one thing that's just sprung into my mind. We're talking about linking accounts, right, and sharing data.
Correct.
And that seems like I know this is an observability feature, but a little bit scary. Is there any control over the data that's actually shared between the source and the monitoring account?
So today you have the option to share on your metrics, on your logs, or on your traces. But today we do not provide any filtering capability to filter what data to share. For instance, not to share on my security logs, for instance. So this is not available today. But this is an item in our backlog to be delivered later. But at the moment, we are just providing sharing metrics, logs, and traces from your source account. But it's up to the source account to decide which one to share, and then we just kick it off.
No, it's not just logs. It's not just metrics either. That's something I wanted to call out and hear from you all about. It's also dashboards, which are actually how most operational teams that are working with observability are interacting with those logs and metrics, right? So,
Yep.
is it like, can you have cross-account visualizations in that central account as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is one of the benefits that we are providing to our customers through this cross-account observability. So their central teams can have an end-to-end visibility across their applications, such that they can identify any performance bottlenecks and the impacted users easily, or they can they can access and run their correlation across this telemetry to create their dashboards, such that they can identify the root cause and also troubleshoot easily and faster. And also, not only dashboards, they can also create alarms on top of their cross-account telemetry. So by this way, the monitoring account is going to be able to notify if an alarm fires. So they're going to have a full visibility across the organization using their monitoring accounts.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about, so you got this massive data, and maybe you just mentioned this and I didn't quite pick it up because it's quite loud where I am.
Sure.
But does this extend to searching? So if I'm sharing log groups from multiple source accounts, can I use insights and things and search across those log groups?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can use search log groups, but also you're gonna have information about your accounts also. So we are not only relying on 12-digit account IDs, because our customers were always saying that it's really challenging for them to understand the context behind that many accounts with only 12-digit account numbers. Now we are introducing also account labels. So customers can use account names, account email addresses, or only aliases to define their accounts, just to understand the context behind those accounts. Going back to the original question, absolutely, you can search for and filter by your log groups across multiple accounts.
So, Steve and I both, we love a demo. It's one of our favorite.
Seeing is believing, right? Seeing
That's
is believing,
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So
That's
let's
right.
see if
I believe you. I'm not
This is
saying
what we call the prove it moment.
Let's prove. Yes, let's prove.
Yeah.
Look, my security
security
philosophy has got to be trust but verify always. So,
always.
Jared, you're going to verify for us, right? You're
Yeah,
actually going to show
definitely.
us. Let me get your
I
screen
would-
pulled up.
I would love to show you.
All right, we can see.
All right, fantastic. So I want to first start by showing you how you configure cross-account sharing between a source account and a monitoring account. And then I want to show you what you can do with that. So let's start by heading over to the CloudWatch settings console. And what you'll notice is at the top of the screen, I now have a new panel where I can configure cross-account observability. And the first thing I need to do is explain a little bit of the concepts behind this. We've introduced the concept of a monitoring account, which we've already discussed, and that's an account that has access to telemetry data such as logs, metrics, and traces that are emitted by accounts that we call source accounts. And those are the accounts that your workloads are running in that are actually generating the telemetry data and sending it to CloudWatch. And those source accounts, their experience is the same as it always has been. But now from a monitoring account, I can view that data across all of my source accounts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a monitoring account, and I'm going to come in here and click configure. I'm going to first choose which data I want to share or have shared with me, whether it's logs, metrics, or traces. Then I identify.
Sorry, Jared, we didn't talk about traces yet. That's it's something near and dear to Steve and I's line of work here in the dev world. So you can actually do, if my service is making API calls across different other services that live in other accounts, you can actually get the full traces.
Yeah,
all the way.
definitely. And I would love to show that to you too. I also have an example where we can see the traces emitted from workloads running in many accounts all stitched together.
Nice. Sorry for
that's
interrupting.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, but this is also goes back to my question earlier on about the sharing of data. So here I could actually elect not to take all the data coming from the source accounts, even if they've chosen to share it. I can just reduce it to what I need.
That's right. So, for example, if I had a central security account and the only thing I want in that account is the logs, I can just opt to only have logs shared. Or maybe I want to have a central account where I'm taking all of my metrics and trace data and not more sensitive information like logs. I can do that as well. So once I've selected the data that I want shared with me, I can then decide which accounts are allowed to share with me. I can specify organization paths, such as the entire organization or individual organization units. And I can also specify individual account IDs. I can then define how those accounts are displayed to me through a friendly name, whether it's the account name or their email or something custom. Now, I've actually already, and once I click configure, what's going to happen is behind the scenes is we're going to create a new resource type in the monitoring account called a sink. And that sink will have a resource policy associated with it, which I'll show you in just a moment. And that defines the permissions boundary for this sink. And then I can log into a source account and create a resource called a link, which references that sink. And once that handshake is completed, sharing is set up. Now, I've actually already configured a monitoring account, so I'm not going to complete this here. And I'll just go into a monitoring account and show you. So I'm now in a monitoring account, and I can show you that I've already linked several source accounts to it. I have 3 different microservice accounts, A, B, and C, and I have a payer account that's linked. I can go to the configuration details where I can see the ARN for the sink that I was talking about. And I can also look at the policy, which defines the permissions for this sink. And you can see that I have actually 2 statements here. One that specifies my organization that can share logs, metrics, and traces, and an individual account. So just to show you the complete picture, I'm going to go log into that individual account and complete the handshake. But first, let me grab this sync ARN so I can do that. I'm in the source account, and I'm going to click configure. I'm going to choose to share my logs, metrics, and traces, and I'm going to put in that sync ARN from our monitoring account. I'm going to specify the account name and click link. Type confirm to complete the handshake. So at this point, I've now completed the 2-way handshake. And now that I've shown you how to set this up, I want to show you how you can actually use it once it is set up. So I'm back in my monitoring account now. And to start with, I want to head over to the service map. So you were asking about distributed traces. So This is what that looks like in practice. So this is the topology of all of my workloads running across my different accounts. From here, I can filter by individual accounts. If I wanted to see what was running in which accounts, I can do that here. I can also zoom in.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that a lot. I do like a visualization of something.
Yeah. So I'm going to select one of the nodes on this service map just so you can see how this all looks. It's a Lambda function. It's running in the microservice C account. And let me go look at some of the traces for that service. I'm just going to select one of these. And what you can see, I'm going to collapse them so it's a little easier to view. But what you can see is you can see a trace that is spanning from account A to account B and to account C all in one place, where I can see how dependencies in other accounts are now impacting my overall customer experience. So at a very high level, this gives you an overview of what's available, what the cross-account experience is like for tracing. One thing I do want to point out is we now have a monitoring account badge, which is displayed at the top of my screen. So it's now very clear to me that I'm in a monitoring account that is viewing data that is being sourced from different accounts.
Nice. And I mean, there are extremely valid reasons for having these cross-account microservices, such as compliance, for example, right? Like if you have a payment service, it's got to be in its own account that's been, all through the fintech kind of compliance regulations. You can't just have it run in any old account, right? So it makes sense.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
we haven't gone through, but we have a service lens feature which is combining all metrics, logs, and traces all together to enable you to monitor your applications. So assume that now you have all these logs, metrics, traces coming from all of your accounts in a single place. So this is really powerful in terms of monitoring your applications.
That's cool. Can I interject real quick? We have a question from chat. I think it's a very interesting question for sure. Is it recommended to have a single account linking all your services or a monitoring account per service? So even like getting down to how do you organize once you have it all centrally? Also, that's. I'm sure it's up to your discretion, but what do you all recommend?
Go ahead, Jed.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it all depends on the use case, so depending on the use case, you may have individual service teams who run multiple cellular accounts, and those teams may want their own central monitoring account to see all of the data across their accounts. So they're not even concerned with the account boundaries. In that case, your service team usually already has permissions to all of those accounts, and you're not really too concerned about, fine-grained access or which types of telemetry are being shared. But you may have broader requirements, like you may have a central SRE team, or you may have a central support team that just needs access to the metric data. And in that case, you may have a different scope of sharing where, say, it's all of the accounts in an organization are sharing with that account, which has a different level of access than your individual service teams may have.
Yeah. Jarrett, do you think it's worthwhile doing like a dependency mapping exercise if you have a lot of services and then grouping based off of those dependencies? Do you think that's one approach?
It can be, yeah.
What else do we have? So we talked about alarms. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me jump into alarms. So from here I have, and I'm going to focus on a very specific workload now. Which is this scheduled worker. And you can see this is a Lambda function I have running in 3 of my microservice accounts. And I have an availability alarm, one for each account. I could also roll these up into a composite alarm, so I have one alarm across all of the accounts. I haven't done that yet. But for right now, I just have one alarm for each metric and each source account. And I can see that account A is an alarm. So now I want to go take a look at that. So I can see that this is a cross-account alarm. It's coming from a metric that's in the microservice A account. So let's go take a look at maybe some of the other metrics that this Lambda function is emitting. So I'm going to head over to metrics, where I can jump into the scheduled worker namespace. And I can see that I have 2 different metrics, error and time, that are being emitted for each of those accounts. I'm going to grab the error metrics, and I'm going to add those to a dashboard. I already have a scheduled worker dashboard that I want to add these to. And I also want to point out that you can also use search expressions, so you don't have to select individual time series. So if you had a service that maybe you're deploying across multiple accounts and you add a new account and you just want that automatically added into your dashboard, you can do that using a search expression. So I've added it to my dashboard, and I can see that the function running in microservice A account is definitely having some issues that's different from B and C. I can see that I have elevated latencies and errors. And so the next step for me might be to see, what's actually happening inside of this function. And to do that, I may go to CloudWatch logs. So I'm going to jump over to CloudWatch logs insights. And remember, I am running in a monitoring account, and all of this data is being generated by source accounts. I'm going to go over to a saved query that I've already constructed that shows availability by the account and an exception message. And it's going to show me availability as a percentage, and it's going to show me what the distinct exceptions are that are contributing to that. So I run that query, and I can see that I have 3 different accounts and 3 different log groups, and the drop in availability looks to be associated with this exception around failing to connect to some endpoint. So I may have a misconfiguration of my Lambda function or the VPC it's running in that I need to go troubleshoot. So that covers CloudWatch alarms, X-ray, CloudWatch metrics, dashboards, CloudWatch logs insights. There's one other piece I wanted to cover really quickly, which is contributor insights. And contributor insights allows me to generate time series data from my logs and aggregate it along high cardinality values. I can use this for troubleshooting network events, determining customer impact, or seeing correlated issues across high cardinality values like device IDs. So
is this what we would refer to as like top N analysis?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's right. I can see top N across all of my different accounts, which is useful for determining customer impact or even performing security and forensics analysis.
So like which customers are most impacted or which network paths are most impacted, etc.
What security events are happening across my organization? Yeah.
Exactly. Jared, before we move on from the dashboard UI real quick, we had another question from chat. So when differentiating between data, right, in each dashboard, how do I know the source of that data? Like what account is it coming from? Is there a way to see which account that particular metric is being generated from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me jump over into CloudWatch metrics. From this particular view, I can see the time series itself is being aggregated across the account, and you can see here the label, because all the metric dimensions are the same except for the account. The label that's chosen is the account name itself. But if I hover on that label and that time series, I can actually see the account ID as well as the account name.
Nice. Thanks for that, Jared.
If I'd not, just before we move on again, if we'd chosen to use a different account label rather than account ID, would that show up there as well? Or instead of account number?
Yeah, so you actually see both. So anytime, everywhere that we show the account ID, we also decorate it with the label. Now the label can be a template from the email or the account name, or it can be a static string that you provide with configuration.
Okay.
And when you list your metrics, for instance, or traces, it lists all your account IDs and account labels together in the list. So you'll see both also in your list.
All right. So I'm going to jump back over to contributor insights. And what I want to do is I want to create a rule that takes my VPC flow logs from all of my accounts and aggregates them together to create top N charts for me. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the accounts. I'm going to just choose log groups by prefix. I could individually select the log groups, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to select the individual accounts and then enter in a prefix. And I'm using VPC flow logs and with an asterisk at the end. I'm going to choose from a sample rule. So I'm going to choose VPC flow logs, and I'm going to choose the byte transferred by source and destination IP. This will generate the rest of the rule configuration for me. And what you'll be able to see is we're combining the contributors of the source address, the destination address, and the sum of the bytes. So this will let me see total traffic between two endpoints sorted as top N across all of my accounts. And so I'm just going to give this rule a name, enabled, create the rule. Now it takes some time for that data to populate, but I have some rules already created. This rule is one as an example, which is the VPC byte transfers. This is the same rule, essentially, and you can see the total bytes transferred between these two endpoints. I can also see top HTTP packets by destination address. I can see top traffic source by address and action, and top rejects, for example. I can also see CloudTrail events aggregated across all of my accounts. And so now I've shown you how you can set it up. I've shown you how it can be used to view cross-account trace data, how alarms can be configured on cross-account metrics, and how you can use CloudWatch Logs Insights to analyze log data across all of your source accounts. And finally, how we can use contributor insights to aggregate all of this data in real time to generate top N reports.
That's cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, I was thinking the CloudTrail event thing specifically. That's amazing for researching security incidents, right? Like that's I could see how that would be incredibly useful. Let's see those reports, Jared. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we do have these are the CloudTrail ones here. So I have CloudTrail events by identity type. So you can see that assumed role is one of the most. These ones aren't probably the most interesting things, but I can see by event name as well. So I can see that parameter. I can also aggregate these along, the role that's triggering them. So if I wanted to see, what principal in my source accounts is most active, I could see that as well.
Super cool. All right. So I think, is that pretty much wrapping up your demo there, Jared?
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. It's a lot of content in a short amount of time, so I didn't have time to go too deep into any of it, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
No, I loved it. It was like a nice, just like a little buffet, like you get a little taste of everything, right? One thing that I did want to ask before we start moving on to the next segment, this new feature is incredible. Number one, makes life so much easier for those who are running, 10 accounts to thousands of accounts, right? But what about I don't want to leave any of our friends behind that are just getting started with observability. So Omer, Jared, either of you or both, please. Do you have any tips for people that, maybe aren't quite there yet? They're not logging, they're not, getting good metrics yet. How do you engage observability when you're just getting started, right? And then, obviously there's tools like this to help once you've reached that saturation point of having the data. But how do you even get started getting the data? Do you have any tips or advice?
Jet, you start, and then I'll take
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I want to say is I want to reference, we have an article in our builders library written by David Janacek on this. And I definitely recommend, go read that. It gives some great insight into how we do it at AWS. But one of the first things is, that you can really do to start making improvements is just start emitting your metrics and start emitting logs, right? For every operation that your services are taking, make sure you have a log entry that's structured and it contains all the information about that given operation, the request, the time that it took, so that you can navigate between metrics and you can use logs and insights to slice and dice. Emitting that data in a structured format really brings a lot of power and flexibility to you. And then, build dashboards and do dashboard reviews. So when once you start emitting this data, start regularly analyzing it so that you understand how your services are behaving.
Yeah, and dashboarding is really powerful, and also alarms. Customers are saying that their monitoring starts with alerts. So I believe, in addition to what Jared has said, it makes sense for the customers also to test alarms and how they can be notified. But also, not only we are using infrastructure metrics with this feature, but it's also running across custom metrics also. So if the customers have applications that are running, they can also ingest their custom metrics into CloudWatch and analyze all them all together in a single place.
I love it. I mean, you got to have the data before you can really do anything with it, right? So that's great advice. And check out that builders article for sure by David Yannick. That's great advice, Jared. And Omer, thank you too. Thank you both for joining us.
Before moving on,
yeah,
so I just raise one thing. So as Jared said, it's easy to set up only 2 steps, but also since we are not copying any data, this feature comes with no extra cost to our customers.
Even better.
Very important. Thank you for bringing that up, Omer. Steve, take us out.
Well, I'm going to bail from this particularly noisy area, I have to say. Yeah, thank you, Omer and Jared. That was fantastic. I particularly like that X-ray trace of just drilling in, seeing where the particular nodes are coming from. That was just awesome. I have to go play with that. And thanks for joining us, everyone. And we'll be back very shortly.